The ancient halls of Ravencroft Castle had remained silent for a century, its stone corridors echoing only with whispers of dust and memories. Deep within its heart, in a chamber sealed with forgotten magics, Prince Alaric lay in deathless slumber, his immortal form preserved in perfect stillness upon a marble dais. The years passed like shadows over his unconscious form, the world outside changing while he remained frozen in time, trapped by a curse born of vengeance and ancient power. Legends of the sleeping prince had faded into folklore among the villagers of Ravenbrook below the castle. Parents warned children away from the crumbling fortress with tales of the bloodthirsty royal, who would one day awaken to reclaim his dominion over the living. None dared venture beyond the rusted gates that marked the boundary between the mortal world and the domain of shadows. None except Violet Fairchild. Violet trudged up the overgrown path leading to Ravencroft Castle, her breath forming clouds in the chill autumn air. The setting sun cast long shadows across the landscape, painting the ancient structure in hues of amber and gold. She clutched her worn leather journal tighter against her chest, ignoring the warnings that had followed her from the village below. "The foolish girl seeks her death," they had whispered behind her back. Strange Violet with her head in the clouds and that peculiar voice. She had lived her entire 23 years in Ravenbrook, yet never truly belonged. Her unusual amber eyes, her fascination with the old ways, and most notably her voice, a sound so haunting and pure it seemed to come from another world, had marked her as different. The villagers tolerated her, but kept their distance, especially after her grandmother's passing had left her truly alone. "I am not meant for ordinary things," Violet whispered to herself as she approached the massive doors of the castle. "Grandmother always said I was destined for something extraordinary." Her grandmother's final words had set her on this path. "Seek the sleeping prince when the moon wanes dark. Your voice is the key to awakening what has long slumbered." Violet believed she was worthless without a purpose. Ordinary. Forgettable. If she could not find meaning in the world of the living, perhaps she would find it among legends. At worst, the ruins might provide inspiration for her music, the only gift she believed she possessed. The massive doors groaned open at her touch, as if the castle itself had been waiting. Violet stepped into a grand entrance hall, surprisingly intact despite the centuries of abandonment. Moonlight filtered through broken stained glass windows, casting colorful patterns across marble floors thick with dust. She moved deeper into the castle, drawn by an inexplicable pull that seemed to tug at her very soul. Her footsteps echoed in the emptiness as she descended a spiraling staircase, the walls lined with portraits of severe-looking nobility with pallid skin and piercing eyes. The air grew colder with each step, yet Violet felt a strange warmth building within her chest, a sense of rightness, of coming home. At the bottom of the stairs, she discovered a massive door adorned with silver symbols that seemed to shift and move in the dim light. Without thinking, Violet began to hum, a melody that had haunted her dreams since childhood. The symbols glowed in response, and the door swung open to reveal a chamber bathed in ethereal blue light. In the center lay a figure on a marble dais, a man of unearthly beauty, his features carved from the finest alabaster, black hair framing a face of perfect symmetry. His hands were crossed over his chest, a silver dagger clutched in his grip. He looked as though he had fallen asleep moments ago, though the layers of magic surrounding him spoke of centuries past in this state. Prince Alaric, the Crimson Prince of the Nightborn dynasty, last of the royal vampire bloodline. Violet approached slowly, her heart pounding against her ribs. Something about his stillness called to her, awakened a longing she couldn't name. Without conscious thought, she began to sing, a lullaby her grandmother had taught her, ancient words in a language she didn't understand but somehow knew by heart. The melody filled the chamber, her voice rising and falling like waves against a shore. The air seemed to thicken around them, the blue light intensifying until it pulsed in rhythm with her song. The magic in the room responded to her voice, ancient seals unraveling note by note. As the final haunting note faded, silence descended. A silence so profound Violet could hear her own heartbeat echoing through the chamber. Then the prince's eyes snapped open. Eyes of deepest crimson met hers, ancient and hungry and filled with confusion. His chest expanded with a gasping breath, the first he had taken in a century. The dagger clattered to the stone floor as his hands flexed, life returning to limbs long dormant. "Who dares disturb my slumber?" His voice was rough from disuse, yet carried the unmistakable edge of command. "Who are you that possesses the voice that breaks my chains?" Violet stepped back, suddenly aware of the danger she had unleashed. I am Violet Fairchild, of Ravenbrook Village." Alaric rose to his full height, towering over her. His movements were stiff at first, then increasingly fluid as his immortal body remembered itself. He circled her slowly, nostrils flaring as he caught her scent. "Immortal," he said, wonder and disdain mingling in his tone. "A mere human girl has broken the curse that the most powerful covens could not unravel." He reached out, his cold fingers hovering near her throat where her pulse beat visibly. "How extraordinary! Are you going to kill me?" Violet asked, surprising herself with her calmness. A smile curved his perfect lips, revealing the tips of elongated fangs. "Kill the key to my freedom? That would be most ungrateful. No, little songbird, your life is safe. For now." Thus began the awakening of Prince Alaric, and with it, the unraveling of everything Violet believed about herself and the world. Over the following days, Violet returned to the castle under the cover of darkness, drawn by curiosity and an inexplicable connection to the vampire prince. Alaric, still recovering his full strength, grudgingly accepted her presence, finding her questions about the modern world useful for his own purposes. "Your kind has advanced considerably in a century," he observed one night, examining the smartphone she had brought to show him. "Yet, in other ways, you remain as primitive as ever. Is that how you see humans? As primitives?" Violet asked, watching as his elegant fingers navigated the touchscreen with surprising adaptability. "I see them as temporary," he replied without looking up. "Brief flames that flicker and die before they have truly begun to burn. Why should I concern myself with beings whose entire existence passes in what amounts to a moment in mine?" Violet felt a pang at his dismissal. "Then why am I here? Why do you allow me to return?" At this, he finally looked at her, his crimson eyes studying her with unnerving intensity. "Your voice broke a spell crafted by the most powerful blood mages of the old covens. That makes you interesting. A curiosity worth investigating before I reclaim my throne and rebuild my court." "And then," she pressed. His smile held no warmth. "Then you will be forgotten, like all mortal things." His words stung more than they should have, reinforcing Violet's belief in her own insignificance. Yet she continued returning to the castle, helping Alaric navigate the modern world, while learning about the ancient one he represented. Each night, he regained more of his former strength and memories, the fog of his century-long slumber gradually lifting. On the seventh night, as Violet sang to demonstrate how music had changed in the modern era, Alaric suddenly appeared beside her, moving with supernatural speed. His hand closed around her wrist, his touch sending electricity up her arm. "That melody," he said, voice tight with urgency. "Where did you learn it?" Violet blinked in surprise. "From my grandmother. She said it was passed down through generations of my family." "Impossible," Alaric whispered, releasing her wrist to trace the features of her face. "That is the royal lament, known only to the Nightborn bloodline. It is the song that binds our power, our very essence." He stepped back, reassessing her with new eyes. Your blood, there is something familiar in it, something old. He inhaled deeply near her throat, causing her to shiver. You carry the scent of the Fairchild line, but beneath it, something else. That night marked a turning point. Alaric began teaching Violet about vampire society, the ancient covens that had once ruled alongside human kingdoms from the shadows. He spoke of the Nightborn dynasty, of how they had maintained peace between vampires and humans for centuries before a rebellion led by his own brother had shattered that balance. I was betrayed, he told her one night as they stood on the castle's highest tower, overlooking the sleeping village below. Mordred could not accept our father's decision to name me heir. He aligned with blood mages who practiced forbidden arts, ones that allowed them to drain the essence of our kind completely. Is that what happened to you? Why you were in that sleep? Violet asked. Alaric's expression darkened. Not exactly. When I discovered his treachery, we fought. I was stronger, but he was willing to sacrifice anything for power. He used a blood ritual that bound my life force to his. If I killed him, I would fall as well. His hands gripped the stone balustrade, fracturing it under his strength. So instead, I cast myself into the enchanted sleep, knowing that so long as I lived, even in slumber, he could not claim the throne. But if you've awakened, then Mordred is dead, Alaric confirmed. Which means someone has finally succeeded in destroying him, or... He turned to her, eyes glowing in the darkness. Or your voice somehow broke the connection between us. As weeks passed, Violet found herself drawn deeper into Alaric's world. He began to rely on her not just for information about modern society, but for companionship during the long nights. Though he maintained his belief that humans were beneath him, she occasionally caught him watching her with an expression that belied his cold words. For her part, Violet found herself thinking of little else but the vampire prince. Her days in the village became mere interludes between nights at the castle. People noticed the change in her. The dreamlike quality that had overtaken her movements, the secret smile that occasionally graced her lips. That girl has been bewitched, they whispered. The castle has claimed her. They were not entirely wrong. One night, as Violet sang for Alaric in what had once been the castle's grand ballroom, a sound from outside interrupted them, voices, approaching torches. Alaric was beside her in an instant, his posture tense. Hunters, he hissed, fangs descending instinctively. They've followed you. Before Violet could respond, the massive doors burst open. A group of men and women entered, armed with weapons both modern and ancient, guns alongside silver blades and wooden stakes. At their head stood a tall man with steel-gray eyes and the bearing of a natural leader. Step away from the monster, Violet, the man said, his voice carrying across the chamber. Sebastian, Violet gasped, recognizing the son of Ravenbrook's mayor. What are you doing? Saving you, Sebastian Graves replied, his gaze never leaving Alaric, and finishing what my ancestors started a century ago. Sebastian raised a crossbow loaded with what appeared to be a silver-tipped bolt. The Graves family has hunted your kind for generations, vampire. Did you think we would not notice when the curse was broken? Alaric laughed, the sound echoing through the ballroom. Ah, the Graves bloodline. I remember your great-grandfather. He lacked both skill and courage, traits that appear hereditary. Sebastian's face flushed with anger. My ancestor helped seal you away, monster. Your ancestor fled while braver men fought, Alaric corrected. But he did manage to align himself with my brother's faction. How interesting that his descendant now claims to be a hunter. Violet stepped between them, heart racing. Stop this. Sebastian, you don't understand. Move aside, Violet, Sebastian commanded. His kind mesmerize humans. You're under his influence. I am not, Violet protested. He hasn't hurt anyone. Not yet, Sebastian said grimly. But his kind always does. It's their nature. Alaric moved with blinding speed, placing himself between Violet and the hunters. The girl is under my protection, he declared, voice resonating with supernatural power. Leave now, and I may permit you to live. The standoff ended in chaos, hunters charging forward, Alaric defending with supernatural strength and speed. He disarmed two men with elegant efficiency, his movements too fast for human eyes to track. But even in his restored state, he could not fight a dozen armed hunters simultaneously. A silver chain caught his arm, searing immortal flesh. Another hunter landed a blow with a blessed weapon, drawing black blood from his side. Alaric snarled in pain and rage, his civilized facade cracking to reveal the predator beneath. Violet watched in horror as Sebastian took aim with his crossbow. The silver bolt pointed directly at Alaric's heart. No! She screamed, and in that moment, something extraordinary happened. Her voice expanded outward in visible waves of power, knocking the hunters backward as if struck by a physical force. The windows shattered, raining glass onto the stone floor. Sebastian's crossbow flew from his hands, the bolt discharging harmlessly into a wall. The room fell silent as everyone, including Alaric, stared at Violet in shock. What was that? She whispered, looking at her own hands as if they might provide an answer. Alaric recovered first, seizing the moment of confusion to grab Violet and retreat deeper into the castle, moving with supernatural speed that left the hunters far behind. He didn't stop until they reached the sealed chamber where he had slumbered for a century. I knew there was something extraordinary about you, he said, examining her with new intensity. That was blood magic. Old magic. Magic that no human should possess unless... Unless what? Violet demanded, still trembling from the encounter. Unless you carry vampire blood in your veins, Alaric finished. Diluted through generations, but present nonetheless. The revelation hit Violet like a physical blow. That's impossible. I'm human. Completely human. Alaric shook his head. Not completely, it seems. There were rare cases in the past, vampire nobles who fell in love with humans, producing half-blood children who appeared human but carried certain gifts. His eyes narrowed. The Fairchild name. It belonged to a human family that served the Nightborn court for generations as musicians and composers. My grandmother, Violet whispered. She always said music was in our blood. More literally than you knew, Alaric replied. It explains why your voice could break my curse when nothing else could. Blood calls to blood, even across centuries. Their discovery was interrupted by sounds of pursuit. The hunters had regrouped and were searching the castle. Alaric's wounds were still healing, the blessed weapons having done more damage than ordinary ones could. I need to feed to heal properly, he admitted, the admission clearly costing him pride. Without my full strength, I cannot defeat so many armed hunters. Violet understood what he wasn't saying. Without blood, human blood, he was vulnerable. She hesitated only a moment before extending her wrist. Take mine, she offered. Alaric's eyes widened. You do not understand what you offer, little songbird. The first sharing of blood between our kinds is significant. Will it kill me? She asked directly. No. Will it help you heal? A pause. Yes. Then do it, she insisted. They're coming. After a moment of internal struggle, Alaric took her hand with unexpected gentleness. Not the wrist, he said softly. For the first time, it should be proper. He drew her closer, one hand cradling the back of her neck. His touch was cool but not cold, his fingers tangling in her hair as he tilted her head to expose her throat. Violet's heart raced, fear and anticipation mingling into something she couldn't name. "I will not take much," he promised, his breath cool against her skin. "And I will ensure you feel no pain." His lips touched her throat first, almost reverently, before his fangs pierced her skin in a sharp, brief sting that quickly transformed into something else entirely. A gasp escaped her as warmth flooded through her body, a strange intimacy in the connection forming between them. She could feel him drawing not just blood but something deeper, something essential, and in return, something of him flowed into her, ancient and powerful. Images flashed through Violet's mind, memories not her own. A golden court filled with beautiful immortals. Blood rituals performed beneath a crimson moon. A betrayal by those most trusted. And beneath it all, centuries of profound loneliness. When Alaric finally withdrew, they were both trembling. He steadied her as her knees threatened to buckle, his eyes now a deeper, more vibrant crimson. The wounds on his body had already begun to close, new strength evident in his bearing. What just happened?" Violet asked, touching the marks on her neck that were already healing. "The beginning of a blood bond," Alaric answered, his voice softer than she had ever heard it. "Something I had not intended." He stepped back, creating distance between them as if suddenly wary. "You should not have been able to see my memories. Not unless—" The door to the chamber shuddered under a heavy impact. The hunters had found them. "We cannot stay here," Alaric decided, offering his hand. "Do you trust me?" Violet realized with surprise that she did. Despite everything she had been taught to fear, despite his own admission of viewing humans as beneath him, she trusted him. She placed her hand in his. Alaric led her through hidden passages that wound deeper beneath the castle, finally emerging in a cavernous space dominated by an underground lake. A small boat was moored at a stone dock, preserved by magic through the centuries. "This passage leads beyond the mountain, away from the village," he explained as he helped her into the boat. "It will buy us time to understand what is happening, and what you truly are." As the boat glided silently across the black water, Violet studied Alaric's profile in the dim light. The arrogant prince who had awakened weeks ago had subtly transformed. He still carried himself with regal bearing, but there was something new in his eyes when he looked at her, a question where before there had been only certainty. "You're wondering why you can see into my mind," she guessed. A slight smile curved his lips. "Among other things, blood bonds between vampires and humans are rare, but documented. What we experienced, that was something different." He trailed his fingers through the water. "It suggests a compatibility that should not exist. Because I'm human? Or mostly human? Because I am a monster," he replied simply. "One who has lived centuries viewing your kind as little more than sustenance or amusement. Monsters are not meant to form bonds with those they consider prey." His admission revealed the false belief that had shaped his existence, that his immortal nature made him inherently monstrous, incapable of true connection. Violet recognized it because it mirrored her own belief in her worthlessness. "Perhaps," she suggested carefully, "you are not as monstrous as you believe, and perhaps I am not as ordinary as I've always thought." The boat reached the far shore, and they continued their journey on foot through a natural tunnel that eventually opened to the night sky far from Ravenbrook. The hunters would not find them easily here, giving them precious time. In an abandoned gamekeeper's cottage deep in the forest, Alaric and Violet took shelter. As dawn approached, Alaric revealed another surprise. Unlike younger vampires, his ancient blood allowed him to endure sunlight, though it weakened him considerably. "A perk of royal blood," he explained with a hint of his old arrogance. "Though I prefer the night, the sun cannot destroy me as it would lesser vampires." Over the following days, they formed an uneasy alliance, bound by mutual danger and growing curiosity. Alaric began teaching Violet about her newly awakened abilities, the power in her voice, enhanced senses, and surprising physical strength that came from her diluted vampire heritage. Your ancestor was likely a half-blood who chose to live among humans, Alaric theorized. Over generations, the vampire traits would have grown dormant, emerging only in small ways. Unusual eye color, extraordinary singing ability, extended lifespan. Is that why the hunters called you monster? Violet asked one evening as they sat before a small fire. Because you feed on humans? Alaric was silent for a long moment. Not entirely. The Nightborn dynasty maintained a different way, willing donors, blood freely given in exchange for protection and certain pleasures. It was my brother who advocated for treating humans as cattle. His expression darkened. But even I have blood on my hands from centuries of existence. In times of war, in moments of rage, I have taken lives that perhaps deserved to continue. His honesty surprised her. You regret it? Regret is a luxury immortals cannot afford, he said. Carry too much of it through centuries, and it will drive you to madness. Yet his eyes told a different story, one of burdens carried too long alone. As days became weeks, their connection deepened. The initial blood bond grew stronger with proximity, allowing them glimpses into each other's thoughts and feelings. Alaric found himself increasingly troubled by Violet's memories. Her isolation in the village, the way she had been treated as an oddity rather than treasured for her uniqueness. They were fools, he told her one night as she sang softly by the fire, her voice making the flames dance in unnatural patterns. To have such a treasure among them and fail to recognize its worth. Violet faltered in her song. Is that how you see me? As a treasure to possess. I see you, Alaric said slowly, as something I never expected to find, something that challenges everything I believed about your kind and mine. The moment hung between them, charged with possibilities neither was ready to acknowledge. Their fragile peace was shattered when Sebastian and his hunters finally tracked them down. The attack came at midday when Alaric's powers were at their weakest. Though he fought valiantly, a blessed silver blade found its mark, driving deep into his chest. Not through his heart, but close enough to incapacitate him. Run, he commanded Violet as he fell to his knees, black blood seeping through his fingers where they clutched the wound. Instead, she stood her ground, placing herself between Alaric and Sebastian's approaching form. Move aside, Violet, Sebastian ordered. This ends today. Why are you doing this? She demanded. He's done nothing to harm anyone since awakening. He's a vampire, Sebastian spat. His very existence threatens everything we hold dear. And now he's corrupting you as well. I can see the change in you. The only corruption was the lies I was told my entire life, Violet replied, feeling power gathering in her voice. About who I am, what I am. Sebastian's expression hardened. So you know, that's why we tried to protect you. Keep you from the castle, from discovering your heritage. Your grandmother made us promise before she died. The revelation struck Violet like a physical blow. You knew? All of you. The Fairchild line has been watched for generations, Sebastian admitted. We knew what might awaken in you if exposed to vampire influence. Why do you think no one ever treated you normally? We were afraid. Anger surged through Violet, decades of isolation and loneliness suddenly explained by fear and prejudice. The power in her blood responded, her voice emerging as a physical force that knocked Sebastian back several steps. You made me believe I was worthless, she said, each word carrying dangerous power. That I didn't belong, when all along, you were simply afraid of what I might become. Sebastian recovered his balance, signaling to the hunters surrounding them. Look at yourself, Violet. You're proving exactly what we feared. That voice, those eyes. You're becoming one of them. I was always one of them, she replied. And one of you, both and neither. The hunters closed in, but Violet was beyond fear now. Drawing on instincts she hadn't known she possessed, she began to sing. Not the gentle melodies she had performed in the village, but an ancient war song that Alaric had shown her in his memories. The notes resonated with blood magic, creating visible distortions in the air around her. The hunters faltered, weapons dropping from suddenly numb fingers. Sebastian alone remained standing, protected by some amulet that glowed at his throat. "This isn't you, Violet," he pleaded. "This is his influence." "No," she countered. "For the first time, this is truly me. The person I was always meant to be, if you hadn't all conspired to keep me ignorant and isolated." With a surge of strength she hadn't known she possessed, Violet gathered the injured Alaric into her arms and fled deeper into the forest, leaving the disoriented hunters behind. Her partially vampire heritage gave her speed and strength beyond human capabilities, especially now that it had been awakened by Alaric's blood. She found shelter in a cave system, laying Alaric on a bed of her cloak. His wound still seeped black blood, the blessed silver preventing his natural healing. "The blade," he gasped. "It must be removed." Violet steeled herself and extracted the silver dagger with steady hands. Alaric's back arched in agony as the metal left his flesh, a strangled cry escaping lips usually so controlled. The wound began to heal, but too slowly. He needed blood to regenerate properly. Without hesitation, Violet brought her wrist to his mouth. "Drink." His eyes, dulled with pain, focused on her face. A second sharing deepens the bond, makes it nearly unbreakable. "I know," she said simply. "Drink, Alaric." This time, when his fangs pierced her skin, the connection between them flared like wildfire. Memories flowed freely. His countless years of existence, her short but intense life, joy and sorrow, triumph and failure, all mingling until it became difficult to determine which experiences belonged to whom. As Alaric drank, Violet saw the truth of his existence. Not the monster he claimed to be, but a ruler who had genuinely tried to forge peace between vampires and humans, who had sacrificed a century of his life to prevent his brother from unleashing a reign of terror, who had known love and lost it, closing his heart rather than risk such pain again. When he finally withdrew, the bond between them had fundamentally altered. They could feel each other's emotions as clearly as their own, sense each other's thoughts unless deliberately shielded. "You see me now," Alaric said softly. "Truly see me." "As you see me," she replied, touching his face with wonder. "Not the monster you claim to be. Not the worthless girl I believed myself to be. Never worthless," he whispered fiercely. "A miracle I never dared hope for." The hunters would not give up easily, and now Sebastian knew of Violet's awakening abilities. They needed allies, somewhere safe to determine their next steps. Alaric reluctantly revealed that there were other vampire enclaves hidden around the world, survivors of the Great Purge that had scattered his kind a century ago. "The nearest is beneath Vienna," he told her. "If we can reach them, they will honor the Night-born bloodline. They will protect us both." Their journey took them across borders, always moving by night when Alaric was strongest. The blood bond between them continued to deepen, not just connecting their minds but harmonizing their very essences. Violet discovered that while she required food like any human, she could now also draw sustenance from small amounts of Alaric's blood, another sign of her hybrid nature awakening. In Vienna, they descended into the ancient catacombs beneath the city, following pathways visible only to immortal eyes. The vampire enclave received them with shock and suspicion. Their prince returned from legend, accompanied by a human who was not entirely human. The regent of the Vienna court, a vampire named Eleonora who had once served in Alaric's royal guard, knelt before him with tears of black blood in her ancient eyes. "We thought you lost forever, my prince," she said. "When the bond to your brother was finally severed, we searched for you but found no trace." Because the spell required a specific key to unlock, Alaric explained, his hand finding Violet's. "A key we didn't know existed." The court regarded Violet with open curiosity, ancient vampires inhaling her scent, noting the subtle differences that marked her as something unique. Some viewed her with hostility, others with fascination. None could deny the blood bond that connected her to their prince, a bond considered sacred among their kind. "The council must be informed," Eleonora declared. "The return of a night-born prince changes everything. The scattered courts might unite again under your rule, my lord." Alaric nodded, but his thoughts, clear to Violet through their bond, were troubled. The politics of vampire society were complex and dangerous. His reappearance would upset carefully maintained power structures, and his bond with Violet would be seen by many as a weakness to exploit. That night, in chambers provided by the Vienna court, Violet confronted him about the thoughts she had sensed. "You're afraid for me," she stated. "You believe your world will reject me, reject us." Alaric didn't deny it. "Vampire society has grown more isolated, more extreme in my absence. Those who advocated for coexistence with humans were often the first destroyed in the purges. Those who remain—" He sighed, an unnecessary gesture that revealed how troubled he truly was. "They will see you as beneath me, despite your heritage. They will not understand what we have become to each other." "And what have we become?" Violet asked, finally addressing what had grown between them beyond the blood bond. Alaric crossed the room to stand before her, his immortal grace making even this simple movement beautiful. "In a century of sleep, I dreamed of many things: revenge, restoration, power reclaimed. Never once did I dream of finding someone who could see past the monster to the man beneath." His hand cupped her cheek. "I believed myself incapable of love, that immortality had burned such human weakness from me centuries ago. And now," Violet whispered, "now I find that immortality merely awaited the right heart to awaken mine." His voice, usually so controlled, carried raw emotion that resonated through their bond. "I love you, Violet Fairchild, against all reason, against centuries of believing such a thing impossible." Their first kiss tasted of eternity, the promise of something that transcended both human limitations and vampire isolation. Through their bond, Violet felt his last barriers crumbling, the belief in his own monstrosity finally giving way to the truth she had seen all along. Their moment of revelation was interrupted by commotion in the corridors outside. Raised voices, the sound of running feet. Alaric was instantly alert, positioning himself between Violet and the door. Eleonora burst in without ceremony, her ancient face tight with alarm. "Hunters, my prince. They've found the entrance to the enclave. Dozens of them, led by a man named Graves. Sebastian had tracked them across countries, gathering hunter allies along the way. The Vienna enclave prepared for battle, ancient vampires donning ceremonial armor and awakening powers long dormant. Alaric took command naturally, centuries of military experience evident in his decisive orders. But as the enclave's defenders moved into position, he drew Violet aside. "This is not your fight," he told her. "There is a passage that leads to the surface, away from the coming battle. Eleonora will show you the way." "I'm not leaving you," Violet insisted. "My blood, my heritage. I belong in this fight as much as you. Your abilities are still awakening, untrained. And yet they were powerful enough to break a curse that held you for a century," she countered. "I'm tired of being protected from myself, Alaric. First by the village, now by you. I need to stand as what I am. Through their bond, he felt her determination, her certainty. With reluctance, he nodded. Then we faced this together. The battle that followed would enter vampire legend. The returned Nightborn prince and his half-blood consort defending the Vienna enclave against the largest hunter force assembled in decades. Alaric fought with the skill of centuries, his royal blood granting him powers beyond ordinary vampires. Violet discovered the full potential of her voice, shattering weapons with perfect notes, disorienting attackers with harmonics that affected the inner ear, even healing injured vampires with melodies that resonated with their ancient blood. In the chaos, Sebastian fought his way directly to them, his eyes wild with zealotry. "This ends tonight," he shouted, brandishing a sword that glowed with blessed silver. "The abomination you've become, the monster you protect, I'll free you from both." He lunged at Alaric, who parried the blow but staggered back, the blessed weapon sapping his strength on contact. Violet stepped forward, power gathering in her throat, but Sebastian was prepared this time. He activated a device that emitted a high-pitched frequency, disrupting her vocal abilities and causing her to clutch her throat in pain. "Technology adapts," Sebastian said grimly, "even against creatures like you." With Violet temporarily silenced and Alaric weakened, Sebastian pressed his advantage. His blade sliced through Alaric's defenses, opening a wound across his chest. Black blood flowed freely as the prince fell to one knee. "I'm sending you back to your eternal sleep," Sebastian declared, raising his sword for a killing blow. In that moment, Violet made her choice. Unable to use her voice, she relied on the other half of her heritage, her humanity, with its capacity for sacrifice and love. She threw herself between Sebastian and Alaric, the blade meant for the prince's heart driving into her shoulder instead. Sebastian's eyes widened in horror. "Violet, why would you?" The shock of seeing her blood, red human blood, seemed to break through his fanaticism. He hesitated, sword still embedded in her flesh. That hesitation was enough. Alaric moved with blinding speed, disarming Sebastian and pinning him to the ground, fangs bared in fury. "She is what you fear most," Alaric hissed. "Proof that our kinds are not so different, that we can coexist, that love can bridge even the gap between life and death." He could have killed Sebastian in that moment, should have, by all the laws of vampire survival. Instead, he looked to Violet, whose wound was already healing with unnatural speed, her hybrid nature asserting itself. Through their bond, she sent a single thought: enough death. Show them another way. Alaric released Sebastian, stepping back with regal composure despite his injuries. For centuries, hunters and vampires have decimated each other in an endless cycle of vengeance. I propose something different. His voice carried through the suddenly silent chamber, reaching hunters and vampires alike. Coexistence, as it was in the earliest days of my reign, before hatred and fear corrupted both our kinds. Impossible, Sebastian spat, though with less conviction. Your nature demands our blood. My nature demands sustenance that can be freely given, Alaric corrected. As it once was, as it could be again. The standoff might have erupted into further violence if not for an unexpected development. Violet's wound, still bleeding, had a strange effect on the chamber's atmosphere. The mingled sense of human and vampire blood created a palpable shift in the air, a magic older than any present. From her blood, a soft golden light began to emanate, expanding outward to fill the chamber. Where it touched vampires, their hunger temporarily abated. Where it touched hunters, their fear subsided. It was as if her unique nature, the perfect balance of both worlds, manifested physically. Blood of two worlds, Eleonora whispered, recognition dawning on her ancient face. The prophecy, when blood divided becomes blood united, The endless night will give way to eternal twilight. All eyes turned to Violet, whose body now glowed with internal light. She found her voice returning, stronger than before, imbued with power that resonated with both human and vampire alike. "Enough," she commanded, the word carrying the weight of both her heritages. "Look at what we've become, creatures of hatred, defined by what we fear in each other." The light from her wound pulsed in time with her words, creating a connection between all present, a temporary blood bond that allowed each to feel the other's perspective. Hunters experienced the weight of immortality, the hunger that could be sated without death. Vampires felt the fear of living among predators, the courage required to stand against the darkness. In that moment of shared understanding, the possibility of something new emerged. Not peace, not yet, but a ceasefire, a chance. Sebastian was the first hunter to lower his weapon completely. "This changes nothing permanently," he warned, though his voice lacked conviction. "But perhaps there is room for discussion before more blood is shed." The battle ended not in victory for either side, but in an uneasy truce. The hunters withdrew, taking their wounded. The vampires retreated deeper into their enclave to tend their injuries and consider what had occurred. And Violet, exhausted by the manifestation of power beyond her understanding, collapsed into Alaric's waiting arms. She awoke days later in a chamber deep within the enclave, Alaric keeping vigil at her bedside. The moment her eyes opened, relief flooded through their bond. "You've been unconscious for 3 days," he told her, voice rough with worry. "Your body is changing." Violet could feel it, the acceleration of her hybrid nature, her blood adapting to fully embrace both heritages. "What's happening to me? The elders believe the prophecy is fulfilling itself through you," Alaric explained. "Your unique blood, combined with our bond, is creating something entirely new. Neither fully human nor fully vampire, but something that bridges both worlds." The implications were both terrifying and exhilarating. "And what does that mean for us?" Alaric took her hand, his expression solemn yet filled with hope. "It means, my beloved, that we face an uncertain future. The vampire courts are in upheaval at my return. The hunters are divided by what they witnessed. And you," his voice softened with wonder, "you are becoming something no one has seen before." "Will I become immortal?" she asked, the question that had lurked beneath others. "Not as I am," he replied honestly. "But the elders believe your lifespan will far exceed any human's. Centuries, perhaps, rather than millennia. A middle path. It was enough. More than enough." In the months that followed, Alaric reclaimed his position among vampire society, but with a new vision, one shaped by his love for Violet and the perspective their bond had given him. The Vienna enclave became a testing ground for careful cooperation between vampires and selected humans, reviving ancient practices of willing donors and mutual protection. Sebastian returned, not as an enemy but as a cautious intermediary between hunter factions and Alaric's growing coalition. The man who had once sworn to destroy all vampires found himself questioning centuries of dogma, just as Alaric questioned his own prejudices against humans. On the anniversary of Alaric's awakening, beneath a full moon that bathed Ravencroft Castle in silver light, the prince and his bride completed what their blood had begun. In a ceremony that combined ancient vampire ritual with human tradition, they formed a covenant that transcended both worlds. "Blood of my blood," Alaric vowed, offering his wrist to Violet. "Life of my life. What was separate, now joined. What was divided, now whole." Violet's eyes, now permanently touched with crimson around the edges, held his gaze as she accepted his blood one final time. "Two natures in harmony," she responded, offering her own wrist in return. "Two worlds in balance. What was broken, now healed. What was lost, now found." As they completed the ancient ritual, the magic that had begun with her voice awakening him from slumber came full circle. A visible bond formed between them, golden light intertwined with crimson, creating something entirely new. In that moment, both realized how completely their false beliefs had been transformed. Alaric, who had believed his immortal nature made him a monster incapable of love, found redemption in the eyes of the woman who saw him clearly. Violet, who had believed herself worthless and ordinary, discovered the extraordinary power that had always lived within her blood. "Not a monster and not a girl," she whispered against his lips. "A prince and a voice, each incomplete without the other. Two halves of a whole neither knew existed," he agreed, sealing their covenant with a kiss that promised centuries to come. Around them, vampires and humans alike witnessed something unprecedented. A true union of worlds long divided, and the beginning of a new chapter in the ancient story of immortal and mortal coexistence. Not the end of all conflict, but the first step toward healing centuries of wounds. And in the quietest moments of night, when Alaric and Violet retreated from the demands of building their new world, they marveled at the simplest truth of all, that a voice raised in song could awaken not just a sleeping prince, but hope for a future neither had dared imagine.